What does one do when the woman he loves, his own wife, laughs just a little too freely at another man's whispered remark? What if the surrounding crowd joins in her mirth, yet you alone hear the true sting beneath the jest? That night, I watched my glass empty itself. I cannot recall choosing to drink at all, but by the time Jessica raised her flute and toasted to real men, I was already swallowing back something far heavier than champagne. The rooftop hummed with soft music and the scent of expensive cologne. Fairy lights hung above us like strung constellations. It was meant to be a celebration, my 38th birthday. Yet, if I am to be honest, I had already begun to feel like a ghost in my own life long before that evening. Let me step back. I am Michael. I own a fitness studio in downtown Denver. Weights, calisthenics, mental grit. We train corporate types who want to sweat like athletes, and housewives who are tougher than they appear. It is good work, fulfilling. I built it from nothing after 2 tours overseas and years adrift in jobs that never took root. Jessica, she was my anchor once. Sharp-witted, radiant in a way that hushed other women when she entered a room. She worked in marketing, outmaneuvering half the executives at her firm. We were solid, or so I believed. Now back to that rooftop. The party was her idea. She said I deserved to be celebrated, that we would keep it intimate. 35 people, live jazz, and an absurd cake shaped like a barbell. I did not want it, but I nodded. Lately, nodding had become easier than negotiating. Things felt uneasy from the moment we arrived. She was electric, more than usual, laughing too loudly, drinking too quickly, brushing past me as though I were a coat rack, not her husband. I tried to dismiss it as nerves or the strain of hosting, yet each time I turned, she had drifted farther away. And then I saw it. She stood at the balcony's edge, holding a glass of rose, tilted toward a man I did not recognize. I had never seen him before. A man in his mid-30s, with a scruffy beard, wearing a blazer with the sleeves pushed up as though he had just stepped off a fashion runway. He leaned in and whispered something into her ear. Jessica's head fell back in laughter. A big, full, open-mouthed laugh, the kind I hadn't seen from her in months. Not with me. That alone was enough to punch a hole in my chest. But then she raised her glass. Hers and his clinked together, and she declared, "To real men." The words rang out like a slap. Laughter followed. Someone even whistled. I didn't make a scene. I didn't storm over. I didn't ask who he was or why her hand lingered on his arm. I simply drained my glass, set it down on a table that wobbled slightly beneath its own weight, and walked out. No coat, no goodbye, just out. The elevator down from the rooftop was empty. I remember watching my reflection in its mirrored walls, straight back, clenched jaw, a man holding himself together by instinct. Not rage, not yet, just clarity. The cold air hit my face when the doors opened at the lobby. Denver nights are sharp and spring-clean, unforgiving. I stood there on the sidewalk, breathing deeply, letting the chill burn away whatever wine was still in my blood. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Jessica's name lighting up the screen. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned left, heading nowhere in particular, like a man walking away from a building he just set fire to. Because, in a way, I had. And as I disappeared into the dark, one thought throbbed in my mind, steady as a drum. That wasn't just a toast. That was a warning. The smell of scrambled eggs reached me before I even turned the corner into the kitchen. Jessica was humming. She always hummed when she cooked, something light, tuneless, that used to make the place feel warm and lived in. But now, in that moment, it felt like theater. A prop melody floating through a room that had gone hollow. She stood barefoot in my shirt, flipping eggs as though we were still us. As though the previous night had never occurred. As if the phrase, "real men," were not still reverberating in my ears like a bell struck too forcefully. "Morning," she said, cheerful without turning. "Coffee's fresh." I sat at the edge of the counter, silent for a moment. My mind surveyed the kitchen as if it were a set. The bright window, the French press, that absurd mug she adored that read, "Marketing Queen." Nothing had changed, yet I had. "I'll be late tonight," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Jim," then catching up with some old friends. She paused only briefly before sliding eggs onto a plate. "That's nice. Who are you seeing?" I looked at her then, really looked. The soft curls that had slipped loose from her bun, the bare shoulders. She did not appear guilty, only polished, like someone who had already rewritten the script. An old army buddy. Haven't seen him in years. It was a lie, but not the kind that mattered. Not to her. Not now. She slid the plate toward me and leaned on the counter, studying my face as though trying to read an article that had not loaded properly. "You okay?" she asked, a slight tilt in her voice that mimicked concern but did not quite reach her eyes. I nodded once. Fine. That single word carried the weight of the entire night before. She sipped her coffee. "You kind of vanished at the party. You seemed busy." Her eyes narrowed for just an instant. "It was your birthday, Mike. Was it?" I let the silence settle after that. Picked up the fork, took a bite. The eggs were good, butter just right. And somehow that made it worse, because she had the nerve to feed me as though nothing had happened, as though my absence had not even left a dent. After a beat, she chirped again, "Should I wait up tonight?" I looked at her slowly, letting the pause stretch just enough to make her squirm. No need. And with that, I pushed back from the counter, rinsed the plate, and grabbed my keys. The front door clicked shut behind me with finality, with surgical precision. No slam, no drama, just the sound of a man walking out of a house that no longer felt like his. And the whole way down the street, I could feel it. Her gaze still upon me from behind, but not with love, with calculation. She thought she'd won something last night. She hadn't even seen the opening move. The coffee shop smelled of cinnamon and wet concrete. One of those early spring mornings where Denver still couldn't decide if it was done snowing. I chose a seat by the window, habit more than preference, and stirred a cup I didn't plan to drink. Across from me sat a man named Alan Burke. He looked exactly like the kind of guy you'd never notice in a crowd. Thin-framed glasses, short sleeves despite the chill, a faded Denver Broncos tattoo on his forearm that spoke more about loyalty than sense. He was ex-cop turned private investigator, the kind of man who saw everything and said nothing unless you paid him to. "I don't usually take domestic cases," Alan said, flipping open a leather notebook. "But your message was specific." I nodded, watching a woman walk her dog outside. "You're not here for drama, Alan. I just need to know who she's around when she's not around me." He gave a dry chuckle. "You said your wife's name was Jessica. You mind me asking what tipped you off?" I didn't answer right away. My eyes landed on a smudge on the window, a fingerprint, maybe. Smudged and gone, but proof someone had been there. "She toasted another man at my birthday party," I said finally. Laughed like I wasn't standing 5 feet away. Alan didn't blink, just scribbled something in his notebook. "Name of the guy?" I shook my head. Didn't catch it. He had a beard. Looked like he sells overpriced whiskey to board execs. "That type," Alan smirked. "Got it. Hipster alpha." I slid a photo of Jessica across the table, a cropped picture from a trip last year to Breckenridge. Her leaning against the lodge rail, wind catching her hair just right. I scarcely recognized the woman in the photograph anymore. "You want the phone records?" he asked, slipping the photo back into his file. "No," I said. "Not yet. Start with her office. Lunch breaks. Who she leaves work with. See if the man from the party turns up." He gave a tight nod and stood. 2 weeks sooner if something pops. I watched him disappear into the late morning crowd, swallowed by briefcases and bus fumes. The kind of man who moves through the city like smoke, unnoticed until the damage is done. I stepped outside and lit a cigarette I'd quit 6 years ago. The first drag hit like a confession. The second like control. I wasn't a man chasing answers anymore. I was a man preparing for them. It was a Tuesday when the envelope showed up. Thick manila paper. No return address. Just my name in blocky black ink, as though printed on a typewriter by someone who didn't like small talk. My office door clicked shut behind me as I sat down and opened it with the slow, steady hands of a man who already knew what was inside. The first photo was blurry, movement caught mid-frame, but clear enough. Jessica, in that damn red dress, the one she wore to my birthday party, leaning into the man from the rooftop, her hand on his chest, as if she'd been there before. The next one hit harder. The same man, the same dress, her lips on his hand gripping the back of her neck like they were rehearsing a scene they both knew by heart. Not inside the party, but just outside the venue, tucked behind a row of shrubs near the valet line, like teenagers who didn't think they could get caught. But they were caught. Frame after frame, Alan had done his job. I stared at the last photo the longest, not because it was the most graphic, but because of her expression. She was laughing, eyes closed, head tilted back the same way she used to laugh with me. I placed the stack down gently, as though it might break if I moved too fast. Then I opened the second half of the envelope. Papers. Printouts of texts, Instagram messages, check-ins. Alan had traced their connection all the way back to a strategy workshop she hosted 6 months ago. The guy was a coworker. Sales, of course. The kind who always wore just enough cologne and carried just enough ambition. I flipped the page. His name, Brandon Hale. I let the name settle, memorizing it like a target at the range. And then I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't even bitter. It was the smile of a man who had just stopped waiting. I opened my bottom drawer, pulled out the black file I kept for client contracts, and swapped in a new label, Hale. After that, I turned to my laptop. My fingers moved automatically. Calculations, spreadsheets, assets. I cross-checked account access, looked at passwords she hadn't changed in years, and made a list. Then I started printing page after page. The machine hummed beside me, steady and mechanical, matching the rhythm of something rising in my chest. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. Because now I knew. Now it was real. And real men don't shout when they're betrayed. They prepare. She lit the candles like it was any other Thursday night. 3 of them. Fat white ones that smelled faintly of vanilla and ambition. Jessica always liked atmosphere. Mood lighting, curated playlists, wine poured into the big glasses that caught the light just right. Tonight's track list was jazz, something soft, clever, non-committal. Dinner was salmon with citrus glaze, arugula salad, toasted pine nuts. She was smiling. I watched her across the table, noting how she draped one arm over the back of her chair, her wine glass dancing between her fingers as though she hadn't kissed another man behind a row of shrubs 6 nights ago. "Remember when we used to cook together?" she asked, her voice warm, nostalgic. "Feels like forever." I offered a nod, nothing more. She picked up on the quiet but didn't press. That was her move lately. Float a little bait. She hoped I'd bite, but I hadn't come to play. She took a sip, her eyes half-lidded. "Do you ever think maybe we're in one of those boredom phases?" I raised a brow. Boredom phase. She laughed lightly. "You know, that space couples fall into. Predictable routines. No surprises, just going through the motions." I let the silence stretch, let her stew in it a beat too long. Then I reached beneath the table and pulled out an envelope, plain white, slim. I slid it toward her, slow and deliberate. Her smile faltered as she picked it up. "What's this?" "Open it." She peeled back the flap and drew out 2 glossy rectangles. Spa tickets. A luxury weekend retreat just outside Aspen. Massage detox. Digital detox. One-way shuttle included. Saturday departure. Her eyes darted up. "You booked this." I nodded. "Figured you could use some time to clear your head." Jessica blinked. "Wait, you're not coming." "No," I said, folding my napkin. "This trip's for you." She stared at the tickets, the silence between us stretching into something dense. "You're serious?" "I am." She let out a breathy laugh, confused but too proud to show it. "Okay, well, that's unexpected." I stood slowly, collecting my plate. "That's the idea." As I rinsed my fork in the sink, I caught her reflection in the window glass, still holding the envelope, still frozen in place. I didn't look back when I left the room. I didn't need to, because I'd seen that expression before on myself. The moment you realize something is shifting underneath your feet, and you have no idea which way is down anymore. She thought she understood games, but the rules had changed. And now it was my board. She was gone by sunrise. I heard the soft roll of her suitcase across the hardwood, the click of the door as it shut behind her. No goodbye, no kiss, just the faint echo of heels down the hallway, as if she were leaving for a meeting, not a marriage. I stayed in bed another 10 minutes, staring at the ceiling. I stared at the ceiling. Then I rose and set to work. First was the laptop. I settled at the kitchen island, opened the shared email account, and began resetting passwords. Bank logins, streaming services, cloud storage. Even that foolish shared Spotify playlist she had insisted we curate together. Gone, locked, reclaimed. Next came the accounts. Joint savings transferred, shared checking emptied, utilities scheduled for disconnection on Sunday night. Just enough time for her to enjoy the spa before the lights went dark. Every click felt cleaner than the last. There was no anger anymore, only motion. Cold, necessary motion. I paused only once, halfway through updating the security codes for our building's door access. My thumb hovered over her name in the tenant list. For a moment, I stared at it. Then I deleted it. She would not be needing that code any longer. By noon, I was packing a bag, not in haste, but with precision. Essentials only, a few shirts, my gym gear, documents I had already scanned. I left the wedding photo on the nightstand, still in its silver frame. Her favorite shot. Us on that beach in Santa Barbara, laughing at something neither of us could remember anymore. Let it stay. Let her walk back into this apartment thinking everything was fine, just long enough to feel the silence settle upon her chest. I closed the laptop, zipped the bag, and stood in the middle of the living room, listening. The place had never been so quiet. No music, no tapping of heels, no humming from the kitchen, only the faint sound of my own breath. I did not feel sad. I did not feel much of anything, only present, only ready. I opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and did not look back. She had her spa weekend. I had work to do. By Sunday afternoon, the silence had shifted, not the kind you sit in, but the kind that sits upon you. I was at a lounge downtown, dim lights, soft jazz, a glass of bourbon sweating quietly on a leather coaster. Across from me, the lawyer, Dev Patel, leafed through a slender folder with the composed efficiency of a man who had dismantled dozens of marriages before lunch. She possesses no separate assets, Dev stated, without glancing up. Everything has been under your name since you incorporated the studio. I nodded slowly. What about the apartment? He offered a faint smile. She will have to find somewhere else to home. That drew a laugh from me. Just once, and just under my breath. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Jessica. The fifth one that hour. I did not open it. I did not need to. They all conveyed the same meaning between the lines. Michael, the utilities aren't working. Did you forget to pay the bill? My card was declined. Is the bank having issues? I can't log into our shared Dropbox. Did you change the password? Michael, what's going on? Panic, dressed in pleasantries. Dev glanced at the screen as it buzzed a sixth time. She is starting to realize, he noted. He took a sip of water, then slid the folder toward me. Everything is in place. We just need the timing. I want the paperwork on the table before she even steps foot back in that apartment. Dev raised an eyebrow. Are you certain you do not wish to speak to her face to face? I looked at the glass in my hand for a long moment, watching the amber liquid swirl. She made her choices. He gave a single nod. Then I will deliver it tomorrow. Outside, the clouds were gathering. Denver spring storms have a way of sneaking up. 1 minute sunshine. The next, thunder splitting the sky like a warning shot. Inside, it was calm. Just me, the lawyer, and the quiet drink. Her messages kept arriving. I let them accumulate like junk mail, because she was not asking for me. She was asking for control. And control was no longer on the menu. The door was cracked when she came home. Not wide open. Just enough to admit a sliver of hallway light. Just enough to say, he is not here. Just enough to make her hesitate. Jessica stepped inside as though the place might bite. She rolled her suitcase over the threshold. She crossed the threshold, expecting warmth, perhaps even a confrontation. What she found was silence, thick, still, a cold that could not be blamed on the thermostat. The living room lay dim, the shades drawn. The faint scent of her perfume clung to the air like a memory that refused to fade. On the coffee table sat a manila envelope, squarely centered as if placed with deliberate intent. Beside it rested a neat stack of printed photographs. She did not move at once. There was no need. She already knew. With stiff fingers, she reached down and lifted the first photograph. Her breath caught. There she was, smiling, pressed close to Brandon behind the party venue. Their lips locked as though they were the only two people in the world. The angle was cruel, clear, lit just enough to reveal the intent. And there were more, a full timeline of betrayal rendered in glossy 4x6 prints. Her knees weakened slightly, and she sat without meaning to. The envelope felt heavier than she had expected. Inside lay divorce papers, already filed and signed. The reality did not come in waves. It struck all at once, like a fall from the last rung of a ladder she never realized she had climbed. Then she noticed the text messages, hers, printed and tucked beneath the envelope. Every flirtation, every plan to meet afterward, every emoji she had believed was sent in secret. There was no defense, no gray area. She pressed her palm against her forehead, suddenly breathless. The spa weekend, the one-way shuttle, it had not been a gift. It had been an opening. And Michael had taken it. She scrambled for her phone, heart pounding, thumb trembling. She pulled up his name. Jessica, Michael, we need to talk. Please, Jessica, I just got back. I'm home. Can you come back so we can talk? Jessica, why are you doing this? I don't understand what you want. 3 dots appeared once, then vanished. Nothing. She tried calling. Straight to voicemail. Her voice cracked as she left the message. Michael, I don't know what to. Please, just come home, she said. We can fix this. You didn't even let me explain. Her own words sounded strange in her ears, hollow, and too late. She tried again. She called a mutual friend, then another. The third sent her straight to voicemail, without even ringing. That was when she checked her group messages. One stood out, from Michael. Sent a week ago. Michael, if any of you are wondering why I've gone quiet, here it is. The photos attached are all the explanation I owe. I've decided to move forward with peace. I hope the rest of you do too. It had 4 reactions, all hearts. Jessica dropped the phone. The silence around her shifted. It wasn't just quiet now, it was empty. No music, no low hum of Michael's late-night workouts, no keyboard clicks from the office. Just the faint sound of the fridge humming, indifferent to the implosion it had witnessed. She rose from the couch, like someone surfacing from a deep dive. Her legs barely moved. Her eyes scanned the apartment, every corner, every shadow, searching for some proof that this wasn't real, that he might come back. But there was nothing. Not a sock, not a toothbrush. The closet in the bedroom had one side empty, immaculately so. He had planned this with the precision of a man building his escape like a new life. She walked back into the living room and sat again, not because she was tired, but because there was nowhere else to stand. The silence wasn't just around her now. It was inside her. The first thing she did Monday morning was call Candace. Jessica had never really liked Candace. Too blunt, too observant. But Candace had been one of Michael's oldest friends, dating back to their army days. If anyone could give her insight, maybe smooth the edges, it would be her. The call rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. Hi, Candace. It's Jess. I need to talk to someone. I came home and Michael's gone. Like, really gone. I know he's probably angry, and he's probably told you things that, listen, I just need a friend right now. Someone who knew us, who knows him. Can you please call me? She hung up, but the dread only grew heavier. By noon, she had tried nearly everyone. College friends, gym friends, even Michael's barber. Nothing but voicemails and unread messages. Late in the day, one of them, Emily, a woman she had shared bottomless brunch with just 2 weekends ago, texted back. Hey Jess, I think it's best we give each other some space. I hope you're okay. No exclamation point. No heart emoji. Just distance, clear and deliberate. Jessica stared at the screen until it blurred. She hadn't cried yet. Her body wouldn't let her. She had spent so long pretending, managing, posturing, that now even grief didn't quite know how to show up. The apartment felt too clean. Michael's side of the closet, his space at the bathroom sink, the coat hooks near the door, all stripped efficiently, without cruelty, but with finality. That's what made it worse. If he had shouted, thrown something, slammed doors, begged for answers, maybe there would have been something to grab onto, a thread she could tug. But he had left behind only one thing, his calm. And that, more than anything, was unraveling her. She spent the day in old sweatpants and one of his t-shirts, curling into the couch like a question mark no one was answering. Her mind kept reaching for explanations, reasons, loopholes in the fallout. She told herself the kiss with Brandon was stupid, meaningless, some shallow rebellion against feeling invisible. She thought she could control the damage, shape the narrative, cry if she had to, apologize when the heat cooled, find their way back like always. But there was no road back now. Only this strange, unbearable stillness. Late that night, the doorbell rang. She ran to it. For a moment, just one fractured second, she thought it might be him. It wasn't. It was a moving company. 2 men stood in the hallway. One with a clipboard. One man held a clipboard, the other a set of keys. She recognized them immediately as Michael's. The taller one cleared his throat. Jessica Walker? She gave a faint nod. We're here to collect your personal belongings. The bedroom closet, the bottom drawers. Everything else has already been arranged for storage. She stood frozen. Who? Who sent you? The man checked his form. Michael Walker. This was scheduled last week. Of course it was. They moved through the apartment with practiced detachment, folding, packing, carrying. One unplugged the record player she had fought so hard to keep. The other coiled her yoga mat as though it were nothing. Jessica sat in the armchair, his armchair, and watched herself being removed, piece by piece. When they were finished, the taller man handed her a folder. Inside lay the final signed copy of the divorce petition, stamped and filed. No note, no postscript, no room left for reply. Only a new return address for a studio loft across town. She ran her finger over the street name, tracing the clean print. She had always joked that he would never leave this apartment, that he was too sentimental, too steady. It turned out she hadn't known him at all. Or perhaps he had simply stopped letting her know. The movers left quietly. The door closed. She stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by too much space and not enough sound. For the first time, the reality settled upon her with its full weight. Michael wasn't trying to make a point. He was gone, and she wasn't the one who had left. The first week passed like a fog. Jessica kept expecting the silence to break, for a message to come through, for Michael to appear. Maybe not with forgiveness, but at least with something. An argument, a question, a look that said, "This still matters." But nothing came. After a while, she stopped checking her phone. The same friends who once filled her inbox with plans and compliments had grown quiet. Some had not followed her. Others, worse, had not said a word. The weekend had become a bitter joke. She found the receipt still in her purse, crumpled next to a half-used lip balm and a folded note from her last therapy session. "Do you feel worthy of being chosen?" it asked, scrawled in her own handwriting. The irony was too loud to ignore. By day 9, she started boxing up her things. Not the expensive ones, not the things that might have impressed people. No, what she packed were the small, familiar objects. Her worn paperback copy of the bell jar, that dumb turquoise mug she always used for tea, a high school photo strip of her and Michael from years before the tension, when they could barely keep a straight face long enough for the shutter. The apartment had become a museum she no longer belonged to, and yet every room whispered his name. She tried to remember the last real conversation they'd had, not logistics, not plans, but a conversation where they sat face to face and talked like two people on the same team. She couldn't find it. Somewhere along the way, she'd stopped seeing him as a man and started seeing him as a prop in her performance. The reliable one, the quiet strength, the man who would always be there, no matter how far she leaned away. She thought his steadiness meant she could bend him. What she didn't understand was he wasn't bending. He was waiting. And now he was rebuilding. It was late Friday when the final delivery came. A plain brown box, no return label, just her name handwritten in Michael's tight, neat print. Inside were her remaining things, a watch she'd given him on their 4th anniversary, a set of Polaroids from their Santa Fe trip, and a letter. She unfolded it carefully. No greeting, no sign-off, just a handful of words. No resentment, just release. "You taught me how to leave. Thank you." That's when the tears came. Not loud, not theatrical, just steady. A slow unraveling of everything she thought she could control. It was in that moment, amidst the empty closets and echoing rooms, she finally understood. He had not abandoned her. He had outgrown her. Michael was not punishing her. He was done waiting for her to recognize his worth. And he left, taking nothing with him but his self-respect. She curled up on the floor beside the couch, too weary to move, too ashamed to sleep. The walls around her remained the same. The view from the window unchanged. But the air no longer carried his presence. In its place lingered a stillness she could not navigate, for the man who once made her laugh was gone. And she had not even noticed when he stopped. It was the wedding of someone neither of us expected to last. An old college friend of mine, Jonah, the kind of man who considered commitment a suggestion, not a promise. Yet there he stood in a gray tuxedo, eyes misty, sliding a ring onto the trembling hand of a woman who looked as though she had not quite exhaled since walking down the aisle. I sat near the back, alone by choice. I was not there to socialize, not there to be seen. I was there for closure. 6 months had passed since I walked out of that apartment, since I reset every password, changed the locks, and left my wedding ring in the drawer beside hers. 6 months since I chose myself. A jazz trio played something soft as guests clinked glasses and settled in for dinner. I had been keeping a low profile, training harder, sleeping deeper, building out my second gym across town. My circle was tighter now, fewer handshakes, more hand-picked allies. And there, across the room, was Jessica. I saw her the moment she entered. That slow, careful walk, hair pinned just so, the kind of dress that once commanded attention, now worn like armor. She laughed once, too loudly, then quickly quieted, scanning the room as if she already felt eyes upon her. She did not see me at first. I watched her drift between tables like a woman trying to belong somewhere. Once more, she seemed adrift, as if she had never truly discovered who she was without the man she once used as her measure. When our eyes finally met, it was only for a moment. Her steps slowed. The tension in her jaw betrayed her. She hesitated just enough for me to notice, for everyone to notice. But then she crossed the room with a smile so practiced I could nearly hear the cue cards turning in her mind. "Michael," she said, as though posing a question. I nodded. "Jessica." She looked me over, the button-down shirt neatly tucked, the new watch, the calm set of my shoulders. Yet what held her gaze the longest was the woman beside me. A friend from the gym. A genuine smile. Easy laughter. Nothing forced. Jessica's eyes flicked toward her, then back to me. "You look good," she said. I offered a polite smile. "Thank you. Life has been kind lately." She opened her mouth, searching for something clever, something to bridge the silence. But what emerged was softer. "I didn't think you'd be here. Jonah asked me personally. We go back." She nodded, then looked down at her drink, her fingers fidgeting with the rim. A pause. Then, "I've been meaning to reach out. To say something. You just did." She blinked, caught off guard by the finality in my tone. I did not let the moment linger. Instead, I leaned in slightly, my voice low enough that only she could hear. "You stopped laughing when I left, didn't you?" She froze. Her hand tightened around the glass, and for an instant, I saw everything written on her face. The denial, the grief, the regret curling at the edges of her mascara. But I did not wait for an answer. I stepped back, offered a nod, and returned to my table. Behind me, I heard nothing. No footsteps, no reply. Only the quiet crumble of a facade she could no longer maintain. The band shifted into something upbeat. People clapped and rose to dance. The woman beside me leaned in. "Old friend," I said, smiling. Something like that. As the music swelled and laughter filled the room, I sat back and let it all move around me. There was no rage left in me, no bitterness, only the quiet certainty of a chapter closed. Revenge? No, merely release. And the quiet satisfaction of a man who had rebuilt, not from bitterness, but from clarity. The chapter closed not with a scream, but with a whisper and a clean, deliberate turn of the page. If this story has resonated with you, share your reflections below. Would you have walked away, or would you have compelled her to stay? Let us converse in the comments.